Please see the variants below. Her video went viral, parents across the nation coming to a grim conclusion. Their children were corrupted, poisoned, evil, and we needed to be fixed. So, a streamer died, and we were all paying the consequences. Officially, it was called the Social Alignment Program, created for the sole purpose of smoothing us down, removing the parts of us that judged, that looked down on people, that insisted on hierarchy. Crystal's video didn't just go viral. It gave the government an incentive to cut out bullying once and for all. Literally. I really did not want a detailed explanation of what the procedure involved, but it was law to explain it to a child. So, I was forced to sit through half an hour of quirky government-sponsored YouTube videos featuring influencers telling me that my brain was going to be cut open. The thing was, I never bullied anyone. I did tease kids. I called Jesse Harlow a stuck-up jerk in 8th grade. I shoved Sam Holland into a classroom because my friends thought it was funny. But I wasn't, right? Bullying was worse. Bullying wasn't me. I judged my peers, yes, but we all did. Once we were self-aware, we immediately began judging everything around us. I judged myself. I judged my parents, my siblings, my teachers. I laughed at their stupid hair, their lisps, the way they spoke slowly, their clothes if their parents weren't rich, their phones if they didn't have the latest model. But wasn't that what being a kid was? Wasn't bullying just natural? But things were about to get much worse. Sitting in an uncomfortable chair, my wrists were gently pinned down. The room was clinical white. The chair was ice-cold, uncomfortable leather. I didn't like it. The device was kind of like a halo. It descended from the ceiling and settled over my skull, coming apart like a vice and gripping my entire head. My reflection in the equipment mirror stared back at me, a trembling 17-year-old trying to stay calm. "Allison," the nurse gestured for me to lean forward and rest my chin on another piece of equipment, placing my head between spinning metal structures, a blinding white light piercing my right eye. I wasn't alone. Across the room, a boy sat cross-legged on an observation bed, arms folded. I recognized him. He used to push kids into lockers and threaten teachers. Whenever a nurse came near him, he started screaming. "I have rights!" he kept repeating in an almost hysterical giggle. "You can't freaking do this to me because I have rights! You freaking—" Smoothing was mandatory, so whether he liked it or not, it was going to happen. He shot me a disgusted glare, lip curled, like I willingly slumped into the murder chair, like I wasn't held at gunpoint and dragged to the procedure room. The boy was panicking, sweat clinging to his head, thickly glued over his eyes. I watched him dive off the observation bed, sprinting out of the room, while his nurse filled an IV. Part of me cheered him on. The rest of me thought he was a freaking moron. I tried extremely hard not to notice them thrumming to life, foam discs immediately pressing pressure against my temples. "Okay, Allison, can you look straight forward, please?" the nurse instructed from behind a pale blue mask. I pretended I couldn't see her smug smile in the folds. "Directly at the bright flash, and try not to blink, all right? You're doing so well, sweetie. So brave." I couldn't choke back my cry, my eyes stinging, the bright light pulsing. "I want my mom," I whispered, trying to pull my head back. But my skull was already stuck between thrumming metal. "Please." I gave up trying to be brave, trying to accept it, my entire body trying to fling me backward. "Let me go!" I screamed, thrashing at Velcro restraints pinning my wrists. "Let me go! I want to go home! I want to freaking go home right now!" All of the anger, the agony, the frustration at my parents ignited, exploding from my mouth in a vicious string of incomprehensible word barf. Mom didn't want me to have the procedure. She thought it would kill me. Dad said he wanted me to have it. He refused to have a bully for a daughter. "Relax, Allison," the nurse cooed from behind the structure. "We're almost there." Her voice faded in and out as a sharp pain scratched the back of my head. Deeper, like it was digging through my brain, picking me apart piece by piece. The surgery was working, but my very soul was on the line.
Why don't we talk about your favorite thing,
Children undergoing alignment tend to respond better when they're engaged. I swallowed thickly, and that sharp scratch became a lightning bolt rattling my skull. I could no longer blink, my body paralyzed. "Allison?" the nurse hummed. "Honey, can you try to say something?" Another pulsing light erupted in front of my eyes. "Speak, Allison," the nurse instructed. "We need to know the smoothing has been successful." I blinked again, sensation flooding back, but not normal sensation. The machine crushing my skull was barely an afterthought. The giant needle sticking into the back of my head didn't feel real. "Yes," I said, and the machine was turned off. I was free, the metal structures prying from my temples. The nurse gently led me back to the chair. It didn't feel cold anymore. It didn't really feel like anything. The nurse wore a wide smile, tying a bracelet around my wrist. Her gloved hands were still covered in my blood. "That's just to tell your parents you've had the procedure," she hummed, shoving paperwork in my face. "You may experience side effects, but they'll wear off in the next 24 hours. Nausea and vomiting are common after the smoothing, but do come back to us if you experience any of the following: nosebleeds, headaches, and using sudden profanity and expletive language." I nodded, smiling. "Yes, thank you." The nurse grinned back. "No, thank you." She ruffled my hair. "Don't you feel so much better, Allison?" I strode toward the door, pulled it open, and accidentally trapped my finger in the hinge. The nurse turned pale, her eyes widening. "Oh my goodness!" She stared at my throbbing thumb. I knew the pain was there. I knew it existed. But I was numb. Strange, foggy thoughts. I should have screamed. I should have cried. But it was fine. The nurse pulled back her mask. "Allison, are you all right?" "Yes," I said, smiling again. "I'm fine." I was fine. Everything was fine. I walked home in the rain, but I didn't feel it soaking through my clothes. Mom threw away all the paperwork I gave her and slapped me across the face. "You're no daughter of mine," she snarled, like I was a stranger, prodding the bandage around my skull. "You're a freaking shell." That was fine. Days collapsed into a blur of nothing. Hours, minutes, days, weeks, months. My bedroom ceiling was gray when I opened my eyes. The sky was gray. Flowers were gray. Ice cream tasted like cardboard. Looking at someone was gray. Taking them in, gray. Every time Mom insulted and screamed at me was gray. When I visited my aunt, she showed me a picture of a political figure, laughing. "Oh my God, look at the state of his hair!" I wasn't sure why she was laughing. To me, the person looked fine. The world grew silent. In class, every student sat and listened and kept their heads down. The teachers called us well-behaved angels. At lunch, the same boy from the procedure room bumped into me in the cafeteria. "Sorry," he smiled. I noticed the bandage wrapped around his head, burns staining his temples. Half-lidded, unblinking eyes. He was still trembling, the trauma of the procedure affecting his body, while his mind was a vacant nothing. That was my fault. "It's okay," I said, and walked away. Then I bumped into him again outside the girls' bathroom. "Sorry," he smiled. "That was my fault." I smiled back. "It's okay." And then the next day, heading to gym class, he shouldered past me a little harder, elbowing me in the eye. Pain struck. Nuclear pain. Real pain that was so real, so visceral, my legs gave way, sending me crashing to the floor, my mouth opening, a raw screech suffocating my throat. I swallowed it down like vomit, blinking back dancing lights flashing behind my eyelids. I thought I was broken forever, until something impossible happened. I managed to glimpse him through flickering lashes and caught a single flash of color among the suffocating gray scale. I never realized his nose was bleeding. "Sorry," the boy apologized, as usual, but he didn't walk away this time. I stood. I blinked. The world was still gray, still dull. "It's okay," I smiled. "Oh, really?" The boy's lip curled slightly, one brow raised. Again, color exploded, vivid and beautiful. The most beautiful shade of red decorated his lips and chin. He wound his fist back and swung it directly into my face. I screamed this time. Numbness became freeing. Feeling became sensation. Sensation became emotion. And this time, pain was glorious, filthy, agonizing. Blood ran from my own nose, hot and wet. So wet I traced each rivulet sliding down the curve of my throat. The boy stepped in front of me, lips curved, nostrils flaring. His eyes were different, frenzied, flicking back and forth. "Are you okay?" His voice held an unmistakable tone of mockery. I straightened up, swiping blood from my face with my sleeve. "It's fine," I said, smiled, and then realized I was grimacing. "I'm fine." I turned to walk away, a dull, throbbing pain striking the back of my head, and he shoved me. Again. Harder. Something ignited in my bones, my thoughts short-circuiting. It was wrong and right and feral, twisting my stoic lips into a scowl. "Prick." The name spluttered from my lips in a hiss, carried by blood filling my mouth. And then I couldn't stop myself. I gagged my mouth, but my lips were already moving, already in control. "Watch where you're freaking going!" Something hot drew me to him, my body twitching. "Are you blind?" He smiled. "Jerk!" I shoved him, choking on hysterical giggles. "You look like a toe!" He punched me in the face. Again. I enjoyed the sting. I enjoyed the way my head swung back, my jaw clicking out of place. I enjoyed the blood running down my face. "I hate your freaking ponytail," he spat, giggling. Somehow I was nose to nose with him, my skin on fire, my breaths stuck in my throat. Something hot and rich filled my nose, intoxicating me. "Well, I hate your face!" I snapped back, reveling in his breaths tickling my face. "You're a little twerp," he grinned. "Oh yeah?" I wrapped my arms around his waist, pulling him closer. I ran my lips across his neck, a shiver sliding down my spine. "Yeah," I said, and ripped his throat out. But his teeth were already piercing mine. His giggles were muffled, manic, as he burrowed into me, and part of me, this feral, animalistic part of me, squealed in delight, his blood running down my throat, his flesh stuck between my teeth. They should have just gotten us freaking counseling. Up next, I died peacefully, ready to see my wife again. But then I woke up inside these shrinking, fleshy walls. I know I died. I felt it the moment it happened. I was an old man. I had lived my life. My children were grown. My grandchildren were grown. My wife had passed a decade prior. I was ready. I made a promise to find her in every lifetime, and I intended to fulfill that promise. As I sat out on that front porch and watched that sunset from my spot in the rocking chair right next to hers, I was almost begging for God to take me, silently, wishfully. When I felt that pain in my left arm and that tension build in my chest, a tear fell down my cheek and a smile formed on my face. My vision got darker and darker until it disappeared entirely. I could not tell you what it was like after that. Not a dream, not heaven, not hell, just vast nothingness that stretched on for what felt like either a blink of an eye or an eternity. During that time, the one thing, the one true thing I felt was peace. And then the lights came back on. Not physically, of course. It was actually darker than ever. But that wasn't the worst part. I felt trapped within a claustrophobic prison cell, barely big enough for me to fit. My bare feet and hands, my whole body, rather, rubbed up against what could best be described as exposed flesh. And then it got weird. Slimy, wet walls that squelched at my touch. From outside of my new home, I could hear muffled voices. Voices that seemed to rejoice any time I moved, celebrating me from beyond whatever hell I was in. I am not sure how long I was trapped there. Days? Weeks? Months? I have not the slightest clue. My wife never left my mind. She was the one image I held onto throughout the torment. Day after day, the walls shrank little by little, squeezing me tighter every day. It was absolutely maddening. I would kick and punch and be greeted with those same cheers, laughing and celebrating my misery. I could not do it. All hope had diminished, and I felt surrender brewing in my bones. That is, until the day I escaped. The walls had become unbearable. I found myself upside down and unable to move. The voices outside had become a roar, and in the midst of the chaos, light filled my room. From the light, two massive hands invaded my space, pulling me by my face and shoulders. They tugged me further and further towards freedom, and right at the cusp of daybreak, I could finally make out the words being spoken from beyond the walls. "Just breathe, ma'am. Breathe and push as hard as you can." Up next. My mother made it clear that one simple gesture was unforgivable. This detail was important because it proved she was the older one in her friend group. She liked the hierarchy advantage and used it whenever she needed the others to listen to her. "Dahlia, Dahlia, look." That was Mika, Dahlia's best friend. She was pointing her finger at Jimmy Peterson on the other side of the courtyard. Jimmy was about to run straight into one of the benches. Thanks to Mika, Dahlia turned just in time to watch the whole scene unfold. "That's what you get for running while looking the other way," Dahlia managed to say amidst the laughter. "Who cares?" Mika said as she kept laughing. It was common for Mika to make these sorts of remarks, and Dahlia didn't mind. She actually agreed. She barely managed to keep it together when she saw Mika's finger pointing straight out like that. If it hadn't been for Jimmy's stunt distracting her, the words, "Don't do that," would have come out of her mouth with a life of their own. She hated that. Truth be told, Dahlia's mom was very strict. Everything at home was fine most of the time, but her mom would be so annoying about particular things. But that wasn't the worst part. Dahlia used to point her finger a lot. She wasn't very good at communicating, so she would point at people to be understood. But this habit hid a much darker secret. Dahlia's mom hated it. "We don't do that," she would say with words sharp as knives. She controlled herself when Dahlia was younger, but as she grew, she showed her true disgust for the gesture more and more. Now she would grab Dahlia's wrist before she could even raise her arm and give her a look that could kill. "We do not do that," she would say, as if stabbing Dahlia with each word. Still, Dahlia didn't hate her mom for it. "She is usually so nice and normal, you know," she would tell Mika. "It's like some things just flip a switch on her." The part that made Dahlia feel for her mother was whenever she would say, "Don't ever let your grandfather see you do that, you hear me?" Dahlia had it rough, but she knew her mother probably had it worse. Her mother made it clear that it would be much, much worse if it were her grandfather who saw her pointing. She could sometimes hear the pain in her voice. "I think it was worse for her, being a kid with my grandpa as her father," she told Mika. "Why are your folks like this, though? It's just so weird," Mika said. Her family was very different. Dahlia loved that Mika was like this. It made her feel like things were normal at school. How long had it been since she last dared to disobey her mom? When was the last time she just pointed her finger at someone when she felt like it? She unconsciously grabbed her wrist at the thought. That Saturday morning, as she ate her cereal, Dahlia's mom walked in. "How's the cereal, love? Remember, we have to be at Grandma and Grandpa's house by lunch. I want to buy a couple of things at a store there, and it takes 1 hour to get there. Don't take too long." She dashed away without waiting for a response. In the car, Dahlia couldn't stop thinking about Mika's finger pointing freely without a care in the world. How long had it been since she was free like that? "Let's go, hun. Grab something nice for yourself while I get what we need," Dahlia's mom said once they were at the store. Dahlia wandered the aisles, found a couple of things she liked, and walked back to her mom. The danger of the habit was real, but she wanted freedom. On the other side of the store, a man talked on the phone with his back turned. He was loud and moved his free hand around while he spoke. "I want to do it," Dahlia thought. While her mother was distracted, she quietly raised her arm and pointed at the man. For a brief moment she felt bliss, but it didn't last. As if he knew, the man turned his head and looked straight at Dahlia. The man didn't turn around, only his head did. Time seemed to stop. The man's eyes, abnormally wide, looked straight into Dahlia's. The rest of his face was expressionless. Dahlia felt the air turn cold. A chill ran through her spine as the man started slowly tilting his head sideways. As he did, his mouth began drooping down at the corners. Her heart beat fast, and she couldn't get enough air into her lungs. When the corners of his mouth had gone far too low, Dahlia was already sweating. His head was almost horizontal. "Dahlia!" her mom scowled, grabbing her wrist. Dahlia looked back at the man. He was talking on the phone with his back turned, just like before. Did she imagine it? Dahlia looked at her mom. Her mother dropped the shopping basket and bolted out of the store. "Get in the car. We need your grandfather, now!" Up next, I let my wife die last Thursday because for one heartbeat I hesitated. I let her fall into the hollow. She was my wife, my love. I know that now.
I teach at a university. I'm 43. I'm supposed to be the kind of man who can explain himself. Right now, I can barely close my eyes without thinking of her, seeing images of her. I deserve this. I know I do. I can dress it up however I want, but in the end, I'm just an idiot jerk who had excuses. I was living between two women, my wife, Jackie, and Leah. I loved them both. That's why it doesn't settle, why it keeps pressing in on me from the inside. Jackie was my wife for 11 years. She worked in research at a drug company I won't name, out past the city. Big salary, perfect setup. One of those gray glass places with gates and badges and people who never really say what they do. She was senior there, the kind of smart that made other smart people straighten up when she walked in. But she wasn't distant from the research itself. She went deep into it, into the compounds, the trials, the smallest details. She needed to see things herself, not through reports or through other people. I used to love that about her. But that wasn't even the weirdest part. But there was a hidden side to her I hadn't seen yet. She was beautiful, too, not just to me. Tall and slight, dark hair, pale skin, black eyes that lingered on you in a way that stirred something low and hard to ignore. The kind of face that made people turn without realizing it. Even when she was tired, even when she was angry, she had that kind of beauty. The problem was that living with her felt like living next to a wire that was always live. At first it was kind of cute, even exciting, but over the years that faded. She noticed everything. If I came home 3 minutes late, if I showered before dinner on the wrong day, if my shirt smelled like coffee from a place I didn't usually go. Over time, I began to feel like I was suffocating in it, like the air was slowly being pulled out of our lives. It felt cold. It felt lonely. She never yelled. Sometimes I wished she had. It would have been easier to fight something loud. Instead, she would just look at me for 1 second too long, or ask one small question in that calm, even voice, and I'd feel my stomach drop. Ice jerk, I used to call her when we fought and I lost it, when I wanted to hurt her back for the way I felt trapped with her, even though staying was my choice. It always made her livid, but not in a loud way. It was something colder than anger, like an inner kind of crying that never made it to the surface. Once, during one of our usual fights, she looked at me and said quietly, "You're the one with the crack in your heart. Behind it, there's just emptiness, an endless, swallowing hole no woman is ever going to fill." After a while, we'd patch things up, say just enough to keep going, and slip right back into the same cold distance that our marriage had become. At least we didn't have kids to drag through it. My marriage was dying, but Leah was about to raise the stakes. Her mother killed herself after Jackie's father had an affair. She told me that before we got married. We were sitting in her car outside my place, engine off, the windows fogged, the quiet ticking of it cooling down. The street was empty. She had both hands folded in her lap, looking straight ahead, not at me. She didn't cry, of course. "Some people don't survive betrayal," she said. Then she looked at me and added, "And they kill families." I never forgot that. My marriage was dying, and my secret was becoming a trap. But I loved her. I need that said. I loved the smell of her hair when she came to bed late. I loved the rare way she smiled, like it had to fight through stone to get out. I loved how, on good mornings, she'd tuck her cold feet under my leg and steal my heat without asking.
I loved the softness of her body, the way her skin gave under my hands, and how I could feel the quiet outline of her bones beneath it. I loved her even when I was scared of her, and I was scared of her a lot by the end. It felt like living under a constant gray sky, something heavy pressing down on me day after day, wearing me down, draining whatever was left of my will to live, like the walls were slowly closing in. Then there was Leah. Leah was 28, a graduate student of one of my colleagues, not a child, but young enough that I hated myself the first time I wanted her. She wasn't in my classes, thank God, but close enough to my world that it made everything worse. If Jackie ever found out I was sleeping with a graduate student, it wouldn't just wreck my marriage. It could wreck my job, my name, my whole life. Leah was nothing like Jackie. Jackie was all angles and stillness. Leah was soft where Jackie was hard. Honey-colored skin, thick blonde curls she kept tying up and letting down again, wide mouth, warm blue eyes, small golden earrings that hung like something old. She laughed with her whole face. When she listened, she leaned in, close, her breath brushing me, and there was something unusual in the way it smelled, something I couldn't explain, but it pulled me in. She was a cloud of warmth and sun. Jackie made me feel examined. Leah made me feel wanted, desired. And yes, I wanted her. I wanted her badly. The first time she touched my wrist in a cafe and asked if I was okay, I felt that touch the rest of the day. It wasn't just sex, though God knows there was that too. It was the feeling of my body unclenching around her. With Leah, I could breathe. I could say stupid things. I could be tired. I could sit in silence and not feel judged. That's how it started. Then it turned into something real, a freaking affair. I always thought I wasn't that kind of jerk. Turns out I was. And the worst part is, she made me happy in a way I hadn't been in a long time. 3 months. 3 months of deleting messages in parking lots. 3 months of checking my collar in mirrors before I went home, erasing Kate Bush and the Weeknd songs from my playlist. Little traces she left behind without even meaning to. 3 months of coming back to my own house with my pulse hammering, wondering if tonight was the night Jackie would look at me and know. She almost caught me more than once. A blonde hair would have been too easy. Jackie had dark curls like spilled ink. I got careful about everything, brushing off my clothes, checking myself before I walked back in the door. But the choices I was making were about to destroy everything. Instead, it was smaller things that almost gave it away. Orange hand cream on my skin. A motel receipt I forgot in the inside pocket of my coat. One night, my phone lit up on the table and Jackie glanced at it before I could turn it over. She didn't say anything for a full minute. Then she asked, "Do your students usually text you after midnight?" I said Leah wasn't my student. I don't know why I said that. Maybe because some part of me was already confessing. Jackie just looked at me. "That wasn't my question," she said. I was a crap husband, not just because I lied and dodged questions. The truth is, the marriage had gotten so heavy on me that I stopped really seeing what mattered, or I saw it and didn't act. A little before I met Leah, Jackie had already started looking unwell. I asked once, maybe twice, if she was okay. She brushed it off, said she'd see one of the doctors they have at their facility, said it was nothing, just this new drug at work, long hours, pressure, everyone running on fumes. And I took that as permission to look away, to stay out later, to spend more nights with Leah. Even then, even with Leah, seeing Jackie like that got to me. That's the part people won't understand. I still wanted her. Not the way I wanted Leah, not anymore, but I'd look at my wife and still see the woman I had once wanted so badly it hurt. I was about to face the ultimate price for my betrayal. Leah finally tried to force me to choose. We were in the room she rented outside town. She'd told everyone she had a workshop, some excuse like that, sitting on the bed with takeout cartons between us. She looked tired, worn down in a quiet way, like someone who's been waiting too long for a man who keeps going home to someone else. "I can't keep being the place you hide," she said, and all I could think about was burying my face in her thick, golden hair, disappearing there, like that old Guns N' Roses song. I looked at her pretty bare feet tucked under her, my sweatshirt hanging off of her naked shoulder, her face open, hurt, still gentle. "So?" I asked. "So either you leave," she said, "or you stop coming." I swallowed, feeling something in my chest tighten, and said, "I don't know how to do either." She looked at me for a moment, like she was about to say something, and then changed her mind, and instead leaned in, a little uncertain, and kissed me softly, her hand resting on my arm as if she wasn't sure I'd still be there. That same night, Jackie asked if I'd come with her to a cabin near that lake in the north. 2 nights, no work, no excuses, just us. It caught me off guard, of course. The owner of the cabin told us not to go far out on the ice. "Looks solid till it doesn't," he said. The next morning, while Jackie was in the bathroom, Leah texted me, "If you mean it, I'll wait tonight." Jackie came out and saw my face. She didn't ask to see the phone. She didn't need to. "Who is she?" she asked. I lied. Badly. She stared at me for a long second, then said, very quietly, "Don't do this to me." She put on her coat and walked out toward the lake. I followed her. The air burned my throat. The snow squeaked under my boots. She looked so thin in that dark coat, so beautiful, so breakable. She stopped near the shore and turned to me. "Who is she?" she asked. I couldn't answer. That was answer enough. She nodded once and turned away from me and kept walking, quickly. I saw the darker patch ahead. I knew what it meant. I remember that clearly. I knew. "Jackie," I called. "Come back!" I wasn't sure she heard me. She kept going. I pressed my lips tight. Then the ice cracked. The sound was sharp and wrong. She dropped hard, one leg through, then both, and suddenly she was in black water up to her chest, clawing at the edge. Her face when she looked back at me. Jesus. I dream that face every night. It is my eternal punishment, part of it. I ran. I did run, but for some awful reason, it wasn't right away. There was 1 second, maybe less, one small, filthy second when I thought, if she dies, I won't have to choose. Then I moved. I got down on the ice, reached for her, felt it break under me too, felt cold water hit my hands like knives. She grabbed my wrist once. I can still feel her nails. Then I jerked back to keep from going in myself, and that tiny backward move was enough. By the time I lunged forward again, she was gone. Afterward, there were sirens, people, a blanket around my shoulders. Someone said her name. Someone said mine. I don't remember much else. I drove straight to Leah. I needed her. That's the ugliest truth after the ice. My wife had just died, and I still drove to the woman I was going to leave her for. Her door was unlocked.
That felt wrong right away, but I still pushed it open. The room was too bare. No clothes, no books, no bag on the floor. Not messy, emptied. I took a few steps in, and I saw it. Her sink. A badge. Familiar shape before the name even hit me. Jackie's name. Under it, 3 small glass vials in a case, and beside them, a sheet of paper. It wasn't addressed to anyone, but I knew it was meant for me. I don't remember the note word for word. Everything started to blur, like I might pass out, but I remember what it meant. It was something she couldn't say to me, maybe something I was never meant to read at all. She'd used that experimental drug to change herself, to become softer, warmer, someone I could love. Leah was Jackie. Jackie was Leah. I think I lost it a little more then. You know that feeling, when everything goes quiet and far away, like you've slipped just outside yourself and can't quite get back in. I remember gripping the sink, trying to steady myself, trying to make it make sense. I told myself Leah and Jackie were the same woman, tried to hold that thought in place, but it wouldn't stay. It kept slipping, like my mind just wouldn't let those 2 women settle into the same person. At the end of the note, she wrote that she saw it clearly. I didn't love her. I loved the drug and what it turned her into, and that knowing it broke her. But she still couldn't stop. She was addicted to being the only version of herself I ever chose. I see it now. She was right.
There's a hollow in me that even true love can't survive. Up next. I lived 8 feet from a dead man for 19 days. I could see it without trying. I saw it every day. His name was Gene Walcott. I know that now. I didn't know it then. I moved to Dresher, Ohio 2 years ago because the rent was $400 a month and I could do my job from a folding table as long as the Wi-Fi held. I do UX work. I redesign the way buttons look on apps you've probably used. It pays fine. It doesn't matter. What matters is, I picked this town the way you'd pick a shirt off a clearance rack. It was cheap and it fit, and I didn't have to think about it. I wasn't looking for a community. I was looking for a place to sit down. But that was before the lights stayed on. The house next to mine had a man in it. Old. I'd see him on his porch some mornings when I went out to get the mail, which was the only reason I went outside most days. He'd be sitting in a plastic green chair, the kind that cost $6 at the hardware store. He had a coffee mug, but I never saw him drink from it. He just held it. He'd look at me, and I'd look at him, and one of us would nod. But that silent connection was about to take a dark turn. I don't remember which of us started that, or if it was always both of us at the same time. It was the smallest possible unit of human acknowledgement, less than a wave, just a movement of the head that said, "I see that you are there." I never introduced myself. He never introduced himself. But then it got weird. This did not strike me as unusual because nothing about it was unusual. That's how things are. You live 8 feet from a person, close enough to hear them cough through the wall on a quiet night, and you don't know their name. And it doesn't occur to you that you should. The first thing I noticed was the porch light. Gene's porch light was on a timer, or a switch or something. It came on at dusk and went off in the morning. I don't know when I learned that rhythm, but I did, the way you learn the sound of a refrigerator. You don't hear it until it changes. One morning in October, I looked out the window and the porch light was still on at 10 in the morning. The light looked sick against the daylight, that pale orange that electricity makes when it has to compete with the sun. I thought, huh. I went back to work. The next day it was still on. The day after that. I want to tell you I was worried, but the truth is, I wasn't. The truth is, I noticed it, the way you notice a typo in a headline. Mild irritation at a thing being wrong. I assumed he'd gone somewhere. His daughter's house. The hospital. I didn't know if he had a daughter. I didn't know anything about him. I missed every warning sign. The recycling bin was the second thing. Drescher does recycling pickup on Tuesdays. Jean's blue bin had been at the curb since the previous Tuesday, empty, starting to collect rainwater. It sat there through the weekend, through the next Tuesday, through the weekend after that. I took my bin in. I took my bin out. His bin didn't move. It just stood there, filling with water and the slow yellow scum that collects on still water in the fall. I was ignoring a tragedy that was unfolding just inches away. Here is what I did about it. Nothing. Here is the list of things I did instead. I answered emails. I moved a button 3 pixels to the left on a screen that 1 million people would look at, and none of them would notice. I was ignoring the signs, and the cost was rising. I ordered Thai food because the driver would leave it on the porch, and I wouldn't have to talk to anyone. I watched 4 episodes of a show I can't remember the name of. I went to bed. I did this for days while the porch light burned and the bin filled, and Gene Walcott sat in his house. He was in his recliner. He'd been there for approximately 19 days. The coroner estimated between 17 and 21, so let's say 19 because it's the middle, and because precision feels like the least I can do. 19 days in a chair, in a room in a house where I lived 8 feet away, and turned my head to look at his porch light every morning, and turned it back. I wasn't the one who found him. A teenager found him. They were cutting through Gene's yard for a shortcut, and they smelled it. I know the kid knocked on the side door and it opened because it wasn't locked. They went in, then came out and sat on Gene's porch steps and didn't call anyone for a while. Just sat there with their hands on their knees and looked at the street. I was at my desk when the cop cars came, then the ambulance and a van from the county. I watched from my window. I stood up from my desk and saw one of the paramedics step off the porch and put his hands on his hips and breathe through his mouth, the way you do when you're trying to get a taste out of your throat. Nobody knocked on my door. Nobody came over to ask if I knew him or if I'd noticed when the porch light stopped making sense. I think I had already become invisible in the way Gene was invisible. Not through any dramatic act of disappearance, but through the slow accumulation of closed doors and unanswered moments. I found out his name from a local Facebook group. Someone posted about it, saying it was sad news on Meriwether Street. The post was between a photo of someone's new deck and a warning about a coyote. It accrued 23 reactions in 2 days, and then the algorithm buried it. I read every comment, but didn't leave one. That night, I wrote about it, not for the group, but in a blank document. I wrote about the light and the 19 days and the kid on the steps. I wrote for 2 hours. It was the most I'd written about anything real in years. I almost posted it somewhere. But what I discovered next changed my perspective on everything. I could feel the pull of it, the need to put it in front of strangers so it could become something other than just mine. Strangers are easy. They don't require you to be a person with a history. You give them the words, and they give you a reaction, and everyone stays home. I closed the laptop.
I didn't post it. I'm posting it now because something changed. The county cleaned Jean's house out on a Thursday. White van, guys in coveralls, industrial fans in the windows, then a lockbox on the door and a sign in the yard. The porch light was off. Someone had finally turned it off, or the bulb had finally died. The house was empty, and I sat at my desk, and I turned my head, and I looked at the dark porch where the light used to be, and I had this thought. I am 8 feet from that house. I sit here every day. If I stopped sitting here, how long would it take? How many days before the porch light question was about my house? Who is on the other side of my wall, listening for sounds that have stopped? Nobody. That's the answer. And that's when I saw the real problem. I went through my phone that night. My recent calls, 4 in the last month, all work. My texts, 2 muted group chats, and a thread with my sister that I'd left on read 11 days earlier. She'd sent a photo of her dog, and I hadn't responded. Not because I didn't care, but because I'd felt the warmth of it and thought that was enough. I realized then that this is what it looks like. Not a breakdown or a door slammed shut, but the slow decision that warmth received is the same as warmth exchanged. That nodding at an old man is the same as knowing his name. It isn't. Gene Walcott is dead, and I keep his porch light on in my head, burning past morning. It doesn't help him, but it's what I have. I tried to remember the last time someone knocked on my door who wasn't delivering food. I couldn't. I locked my door that night the way I lock it every night. My porch light is on a timer. It comes on at dusk and goes off in the morning. I think it does. I haven't checked from the outside in a while. I don't know what any of this looks like from the street. If it stops making sense, I need you to understand something. Nobody will notice.